Thanks for that. I'll introduce myself first, and I'm going to hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves. My name's Neil Rankin. I am, well, I wear various hats at various times. I've been around in the space for a long time. I know the guys at Zebu very well. I was here on day one, if not day zero, and I'd like to thank them for this surroundings we have. It's a great panel, and it's been really a source of pride and inspiration to me to see how they have done in their journey, you know. I'm representing a company called Cavenwell, which I helped co-found in Dubai. We do corporate structuring, professional services. We work with a lot of DeFi projects. We do regulatory and compliance consulting, all the kind of fun stuff, you know. And I'm going to hand over to the guys to introduce themselves. Eva.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. Thank you for having us. My name is Eva Lawrence. I am head of EMEA for Figment. We are the leading institutional staking provider, providing non-custodial protocol staking for over 200 institutions globally. My background is in TradFi. I worked at Morgan Stanley as a trader. I was there for 8.5 years and ran their European flow trading desk for securities lending. Then around 5 years ago, I saw the light, came into crypto, and haven't looked back.
Thanks, Eva. So my name is Michael Mendes. I'm head of DeFi partnerships at Trilitech. You can see us as the London hub for Tezos adoption and Etherlink, which is our EVM optimistic rollup. So yeah, lovely to be on the panel, and hopefully we can have a good discussion.
Cheers, Mikey. My name's Angus. I'm from Chronicle. We're the Oracle of MakerDAO, or that's what we're sort of known for, I suppose. But as of a few weeks ago, last month, we just opened up our Oracle protocol to everyone. We've been their exclusive Oracle since 2017. If you know Oracles, then you know what we do. Yeah, it's great to be here with very esteemed panel members to talk about DeFi today.
Thank you. My name is Ran Hammer. I work for Orbs. We're a blockchain infrastructure protocol, been around since 2017. Pivoted a few times along the way. We are a layer 3 blockchain, meaning we provide decentralized backend for DeFi protocols running on L1s and L2s. Some of our most interesting use cases are with DEXs. We do limit orders and TWAP orders for DEXs in a way that's completely decentralized. We have some interesting new projects coming out. Liquidity Hub, which is now live on Quickswap and Polygon, which is a liquidity aggregation solution. We also build on the Ton blockchain, that's the only known EVM, where we are based out of Tel Aviv and just establishing a small office here in London.
Thanks, guys. So DeFi defined. We're going to get to what's next for DeFi, but I think where we'll start is, what is DeFi? What does it mean to you? Where is DeFi now? So I'm going to start from my left, Eva. What does DeFi mean to you?
So I think the term DeFi gets thrown around for a number of different things that potentially aren't actually DeFi. And I think it makes us lose sight of the basis of DeFi, which to me is global permissionless finance. It is about kind of opening up, decentralizing finance. And it's not any crypto project that you're not sure what to classify it as, to throw it under the DeFi umbrella. And I think that the purpose of DeFi is important, so we shouldn't lose sight of that when we're pushing the industry forward and when we're championing DeFi. We should be careful to leave out what is not.
What isn't DeFi? Yeah, absolutely. Mike?
Yeah, I can say DeFi, if we look at the verticals between gaming, NFTs and DeFi, DeFi is the best product market fit that we have, like within the Web3 space. So DeFi to me is more around innovation. Like in a month's time from now, there's some new DeFi protocol. There's half the thing of the protocols. I'm not even sure their names anymore. So that innovation is just constantly happening. That's for me is what DeFi is bringing to the table. And also being from sunny South Africa, oftentimes we don't have access to, what in Europe we all more familiar with, like what all the banking sector has to offer here. So DeFi is that global accessibility, as Eva was also saying. So to me, it's a bit of that accessibility and also this continuous innovation in the financial markets, of course, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Angus?
I think for me, DeFi centers around one sort of key word, and that's one that Eva actually mentioned, which was permissionless. So I think it's hard to say, what is DeFi, what isn't DeFi, or even talk about all of that in the time that we have on this panel, because essentially it means decentralized finance. And could you explain everything that was in the sort of finance world, right? It's just a decentralized form of that, and therefore there are a huge amount of different applications of financial products that we're seeing pop up in the DeFi space, from remittance to clearing to loans to collateralized and uncollateralized loans. A huge array of products, and for me, it's not really about the product. It's about this whole idea of it being permissionless. There's no one telling you how you can and can't spend your money or your tokens or your capital, where you can and can't deploy it. As long as you know how to do it, you can do it. And perhaps that comes with its own benefits, but also its own risks, of course, because your bank will, I don't know if any of you have ever tried sending money to a crypto exchange, perhaps a lesser known crypto exchange with your bank, or perhaps one that should not be named, that is under the purview of all banks right now, that sounds like finance. They will stop you, and they will halt you from making that transaction. And I think for a lot of people, when we're starting to see how banks can step in and stop you deploying your capital or spending your money, it really pushes the envelope for DeFi and helps people really understand what permissionless actually means. Because everything that we're doing in the traditional finance world is permissioned in that sense. So for me, it's about being permissionless.
Yeah, the problem is, I always thought that with crypto I could do essentially with my money whatever I want, but my wife still tells me what to do with it. So for me personally, that doesn't work out too well. But
it's permissioned, right?
Yeah, it's still permission for me. Although we do have the technology for it, though. if I was, but seriously, I would take the more extreme kind of notion. I would say that everything that happens on chain is DeFi. I think that's what's interesting about Web 3 as compared to Web 2 is that you do have the financial aspect to essentially everything that's going on, all the use cases. And if a use case does not have that, it's probably not Web 3. So I would say that everything that happens on chain, from peer-to-peer Bitcoin transactions through, everything, all the stuff that we know that we actually call DeFi, right? DEXs and lending and aggregation, that everything that has to do with trading on chain, but also trading NFTs and also engaging, buying and selling friend tech keys. That's, I would say, everything that happens on chain in a way that's intermediary-less and permissionless is DeFi in the broader sense of things.
Yeah, thanks for that, guys. I think that traditionally we've kind of seen things like staking, yield, certain things that, if you like, return, all kind of an integral part of the DeFi ecosystem. Staking for rewards, Eva, is that part of DeFi?
I have very, very strong views on this, and as you might imagine, and no, staking, as we're talking about non-custodial protocol staking, is not DeFi. There's no financial product underneath that. There's no investment product on that. A person or an institution, if they're engaging in non-custodial protocol staking, which means the assets aren't transferring, there's no transfer of title, in that action, they're staking to secure the blockchain, to maintain the integrity of the network. As a result, they receive returns from the protocol. Those returns aren't determined by me or by another company in the space. Those returns are determined by the protocol. And those returns are not yield. They do not derive from an investment product. They're based around how can we ensure the validity and the continued success of a particular network. So you don't have you don't have the underlying investment product, you don't have the finance aspect of it to bring it into the DeFi sphere. The returns that you get aren't a yield that X person decides they're going to give to one client or one entity. They are determined based on the amount that you are staking and by the protocol. So for that aspect, it's not a DeFi product or a DeFi process that you're going through. But I think what we have in the industry is, unfortunately, people talk about lending and staking in the same breath, and they put them together and they say, oh, well, you know, this is a lending product. If it's non-custodial protocol staking, you are not lending those tokens. You're not transferring them to another counterparty. It's not, you know, like something you would say maybe see on AMM. It's not Aave. That is not what staking is about, and that's not the process that it follows. So I think what we have to be very careful is, again, like lumping these terms together. Definitely you could say some of the lending protocols are DeFi. That makes sense.
Sure.
But staking itself, that doesn't fall within the DeFi category. And then to the other end of the spectrum, you've got things like Lido, Rocket Pool. They are decentralized. Well, in Lido's case, a DAO that is the DAO is determining the returns. They have, you know, voting and governance rules in place. Whether they are decentralized, well, that is a completely separate topic, and probably one that could take up the entire time of the panel to share a view on. But that is another process for staking, and a completely different setup for liquid staking, which again is not the same as non-custodial protocol staking.
Sure, okay, yeah, no, fair enough, because I think if you remember back to kind of the original DeFi summer when DeFi became a thing, you know, I think one of the kind of adoption curves there was people, you know, effectively investing their capital in Ponzi's, for want of a better description, and getting yield, getting a return, you know, but it was very much, as it turned out, it was an unsustainable return, whereas I guess what you're speaking to is rewards being more of a literal reward for staking the network, for adding to the security and distribution and decentralization. So that's not DeFi.
Exactly.
Staking isn't DeFi.
Non-custodial protocol staking does not fall into the DeFi umbrella.
But if you stake with Lido and get a liquid staking token and you go out and you perform actions out there, that is DeFi.
So that is, in my view, more in the DeFi spectrum, but then I think you come into the discussion, well, to be DeFi, how decentralized do you need to be? What is the minimum level of decentralization to check that DeFi box? So I think
we'll come to that.
That's the other side of things.
We'll keep coming back to that, because it's how decentralized are you? How decentralized can you be? You know, how decentralized is a DEX? I mean, ultimately, there's always some centralized component, whether it even just be the ramp that you get your money in and out. RAND DEXs is on-chain trading DeFi.
Yeah, so obviously, I would say DEXs are like the core, like the cornerstone, right? The most important building block. People talk about DeFi, talk about building blocks, right? Because it's all composable, all work together. So DEX is the core, most important component of DeFi. There is no DeFi, well, I'm contradicting my previous description, but still, there's no DeFi in the way that we kind of perceive it without the DEX. End of the day, DEX, decentralized exchange, to those of you who do not understand the term, also called usually an AMM, an automated market maker, is essentially the venue where people exchange one type of token for another. You have a bunch of those in different ecosystems. Biggest known one is Uniswap, but you have a lot of other ones in different ecosystems. The first thing you do on a new chain is you go to the DEX. The first thing that is usually developed on top of an emerging ecosystem is the DEX, because that's where the trading happens. DEXs, like having a DEX kind of operate is crucial, but it's also, it's a fine balance, because on the one hand, and it's also like a chicken and an egg, because on the one hand, you need to have people providing liquidity onto the DEX in order to have the DEX give competitive prices. Because if you don't have liquidity, then usually the prices on the DEX for assets that are also traded in other venues.
And again, they've been rewarded for that. They've been rewarded for that liquidity.
Exactly. So you know, somebody who develops a DEX or tools for DEXs, you want to keep the liquidity providers incentivized because that what gives you the good price. But liquidity providers would not be as incentivized if there's not already people trading on the venue, which generates trading fees, which the LPs are getting. So DEXs are now, I think, in the lowest they have ever been since DeFi summer. They're having a hard time just because DeFi volumes are low. But
do you know how that compares to centralized exchanges in terms of proportion of market share? Has that changed? Because I feel like that decentralized exchanges is where I see activity, and I'm wondering if, do you see what I mean? Actually, proportionally, there's an increase.
Hey, you're stealing my thunder.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just, yeah, but yeah. So it's like the lowest ever for DEXs now. It's also the lowest ever for CeFi, and you do see the trends changing. Like you do see more trading on Uniswap as compared to Binance or Coinbase. You see the graphs of like coins going down, Uniswap going up. Also, I feel there's many reasons why it would pick. I think it will pick up again, and why I think the next bull market is going to be on chain and primarily on the DEXs. Just to name a few, I believe that regulatory pressure is essentially pushing people, especially in the US, outside of CeFi and into DeFi. Also, you see that, you know, a lot of time the trends are coming from the newer assets. Like in crypto, a lot of times it's first the retail and then the institutionals coming in. So the retailers, a lot of they're looking for the new, like the next this big thing, the next kind of trend. And a lot of the time those trends happening on chain before they go to CeFi. We've seen that with DeFi and DeFi summer. We have seen that with NFTs as well, which are now dead. I'm kidding, it's not. Anyways, so with NFTs, you did see how essentially everything was on chain. Like OpenSea is a DEX. There's a question how decentralized it is, but it is a decentralized exchange. And I do believe that right now they are at the lowest, and it's not easy, but I do feel that once things pick up again, DEXs and again, as the cornerstone of DeFi is going to be crucial in the next bull run happening.
Sure.
If I can maybe just add as well. So DEX is because they're the liquidity engine of the ecosystem as well. I actually had a point I wanted to make, and it slipped my mind. Sorry, continue.
No problem. I was going to kind of steer it into. Oh, you've got it.
Yes,
okay,
sorry.
He's back.
We see the TVL. Everyone sees it kind of dropping and thinking, okay, ecosystem, it's all falling apart. Capital efficiency has gotten better with like Uniswap v3, and I think that oftentimes people misunderstanding what's actually how the ecosystem has evolved. So I just wanted to make that point as well. So you don't need as much capital in order to be efficient. So just keeping that in mind, we are continuously seeing innovation, especially in the DEX space. So I suspect that your V4s and V5s and V6s and how that will interact in the market will evolve quite dramatically.
Yeah. And I'll try and pull together a couple of points there, because it is a game of liquidity, and it was always, and it continues to be interesting to see liquidity slosh around from, this hot thing to this hot thing. And you talked, everybody has kind of mentioned regulatory pressure. Angus, you talked about permissionless DEXs. You can go on and you can just trade. I guess how realistic is that to continue, and how, if we look at more integration with traditional finance, how realistic is it that DEXs can kind of maintain that permissionless, anonymous ability to interact? Because it feels to me like the regulatory pressure is just closing in. Are we headed to a space, Michael, where, and feel free to jump in on this, Angus, where permission DeFi will become the norm, or do you think we can keep bits of it abstracted enough that you can still have a permissionless experience, but somewhere at some point you have, proven who you are and where you've come from?
I can maybe touch on it first, and then
go ahead.
So, if anyone hasn't read, in September there was an IOSCO report Highly recommended. If you're in DeFi, please read through it. It gives a lot of recommendations in terms of what global regulators are looking at. So like what the world regulators are looking for. They want to understand a lot of what's happening in DeFi. And in my mind, what's triggered a lot of this regulatory pressure movement is real world assets like treasury bonds on chain and securities. As soon as you get into that space, you're in the permissioned universe. You can't get around it. So KYC and KYT, oftentimes people are concerned about it, but in actual fact, it's a natural part of this evolution of the space. So I think permission DeFi will continue to evolve. Like we'll see more, things like ZK KYC. So you don't really need to know all the details of your client, but these are certain things that I think we'll see our market evolve. And Angus, I don't know.
I actually wanted to make quite a similar point, actually. I think the point is that and you touched on this, Neil, that there is a sort of a clear line between permissioned and permissionless finance. And we tend to think of the two things as, permissioned is TradFi, permissionless is DeFi. And really, for me, the big part of how that all comes together is around real world assets. I think in terms of regulation, I think it will always be very, very difficult for regulators to try and effectively regulate any on-chain activity. So if we're talking about on-chain token swaps and that sort of thing, they can come out with rules, but every sort of regulator will have a different set of rules, and people will just move to that, or move their sort of digital activity to that jurisdiction using various tools, IP, switching, etc. So in terms of, regulation suffocating DeFi in any sort of way, I think that's not, in my opinion, not a huge risk. In terms of how do we unlock DeFi, how do we combine that permissioned or TradFi space and the permissionless or DeFi space, that's what Michael just touched on there. And it's this whole idea of linking the two together in a way that works for both sort of rule books, right? As we know in DeFi, we don't have much of a rule book, but they do have a very long and complicated one for the traditional finance system. And a lot of it involves around things like KYC and know your customer and AML, anti-money laundering regulation, which is there really to try and protect that ecosystem, that fiat ecosystem, and that's never going to go away. And if we want to combine DeFi and TradFi, and we want to do that through treasury bills and deploying on-chain capital into treasury bills, or all these big DeFi players like your makers and your Aves and your compounds and even Uniswap, people who have these huge treasuries, multi-millions, in some cases billions of dollars in their treasuries. If they want to find a way to lend that capital out to the traditional finance space, so that the traditional finance space can take advantage of the sort of the cheap credit that DeFi has to offer, and obviously DeFi gets this ability, has this new market to lend all their unutilized capital to. Then you need that sort of layer in the middle that's going to effectively aggregate the attestations of those people who have to be in the middle for the TradFi space. Your auditors, your issuers, your creditors, your trustees, right? All of these people are going to have to continue to make attestations and continue to effectively sign to the to verify these transactions to go both ways. But what's missing right now is, and this is something that Maker's done a lot of work on and is really pioneering, is a way to, and it's what we're working on at Chronicle right now, is this sort of layer that allows that to work in like an institutional grade automated way, right? Right now it's all paperwork, it's all red tape, it's all bureaucracy, and it takes a long time and nothing's guaranteed. But if we can build that layer in the middle that effectively connects those two markets, DeFi, TradFi, the two different right now liquidity pools, if you like, or pools of capital, that's where, in my opinion, DeFi goes to the next level, and blockchain technology with it as well.
It's about bridging the two worlds, and you can't get away from regulations. it's always quite interesting to me, obviously my countrywoman Lisa, before speaking on behalf of the ambitious plans the government in the UK have to, embrace our industry, fintech generally. But at the same time, you have a situation whereby the FCA are bringing in on Monday, really quite a restrictive regime that crypto companies will have to conform to. And I sometimes wonder if, I guess that's the tail wagging the dog to an extent. But how do you do it without it stifling the innovation? That's the thing, right? It's how do you abstract all this stuff? We're not going to get away from it. Regulation's important. It's there for good reasons. But I think the experience, the UX, the way we interact, I think, we don't want to lose that. So it's how do you, satisfy the requirements, abstract it, and allow people still to transact? Because I think that's absolutely the way it's going. Just walking around here the last kind of 48 hours, the amount of people that are talking about real world assets, it's kind of the buzz. It feels like it might be the next thing. And I'm kind of conscious of time, so we'll move on and start to get into...
I have a funny note about that, sorry.
On you go.
On. Just saying, it's interesting to see how the market moves things change, because 2 years ago, all the institutions were looking how they can have regulation in place so they can put money in DeFi, and now it's all the DeFi people looking to put money in real-world assets and treasury bills. So it's still the same. The incentive is still on the right way, but it's funny how it changes. But
crypto needs a narrative, right?
It's effectively swinging with interest rates, right? So right now we've got this situation where in DeFi, or DeFi as a whole, has lots of really cheap credit. Right? Yeah. But credit to obtain in the traditional finance world is really expensive right now, because as we know, the central banks are pushing interest rates through the roof. So you've got this really interesting synergy right now, which I think you just touched on, Ran, where DeFi's got all this underutilized credit capital, which I was just sort of talking about there, that they want to loan out to people, but people aren't really utilizing on chain. And then you've got the traditional finance world that's dying for capital. They really want the liquidity, but that they can get at a good rate, and there's nowhere to get it apart from on chain, sure. Right? So yeah, you're right. It's how do we pull those two things together, and as those rates change and as the environment changes, we'll see it probably swing back again, right? The other way.
Eva, you see a lot of institutional business. Obviously, that's kind of your core. Do you see that interest? Do you see an uptick? Are the institutions still coming? Are they here?
No, the institutions are definitely coming, and I think some of them are, slowly entering the room in terms of DeFi, but what we're seeing is this convergence of CeFi and DeFi, and we talked about it already with the permission versus permissionless. And what I think we'll see is, the industry work out how we can make these two worlds work together. What we're not looking to do with DeFi is to say, okay, let's take finance and put it on the blockchain. Okay, we're done. What we're trying to do is how we can improve the financial system, how we can improve accessibility. And I think for more institutions to get involved, we'll need to see how we can bridge that gap for access for them, right? You're not going to have a large pension fund go and trade on a DEX tomorrow. It's simply not going to happen. But what you're going to see is firms look at ways that they could maybe start off in the permissioned world and then move over into the permissionless world and then move back again. And having those two worlds work together, I think, is where we're going to see more and more institutions come into the space. They have regulation that they need to abide by. It really doesn't matter to them whether or not DeFi space itself is regulated. They have regulations that they need to follow. So it's kind of how can that gap be bridged to allow the move from centralized to decentralized permission to permissionless and back. Okay,
so we're talking about DeFi, but a couple of the panelists have talked about Web3. And personally, I think that we kind of bucket everything together a little bit too much. For me, I think DeFi is quite separate to Web3 in terms of the way user experience, NFTs. Ran, how do you think those two worlds within a wider ecosystem interact? What about integrations with GameFi, SocialFi? I was saying crypto always needs a narrative. Right now it's SocialFi, everybody's in fintech.
Yeah.
It's always the thing, and that's that liquidity slosh that I was talking about. Now everybody's over here. How does DeFi interact with the other kind of crypto narratives?
Yes, I would say it doesn't, because it's the same thing. That's a bit of an extreme approach. Say, if I try to take it like one notch down, I would say there's a very close, mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship between anything else that's on-chain and DeFi. I mean, I don't know, Friendster, right? That's the cool one now. There's also the dating app one where you gamble on whether or not it. Do you know that one?
No.
There's like a new project now that's becoming quite popular that. There's a live video stream of a date, and you gamble your crypto on whether or not it's going to be successful or not. It's quite big, actually. I know
it's like the
funny.
hamsters. Did you see the gambling on hamsters? How long
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that was great.
That's decentralized gambling. I sometimes
Yeah,
wonder,
that's DeFi.
is that
DeFi.
what-
People need. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like, okay, I want to play in one of those stupid things, right? Like that's what people do. It's not mature yet. That's not the future we envision. But it's happening, and it's happening now. And if I want to play in any of these ecosystems, I want to buy something in the GameFi space. I want to do something like interact in the SocialFi space. I want to buy somebody's keys on Friendster or whatever. I need to get ETH. So I onboard on crypto unless I'm already onboarded, and then I go to the DEX. Then I buy whatever specific token I need to get in order to participate. And if I end up making money there, which is still right now the purpose of most people who are playing with these platforms. That was NFT, that's GameFi, that's SocialFi as well. Once people make money, they want to liquidate it, and then they go back to the DEX. End of the day, there's fiat onboarding, offboarding somewhere. People do want money for the real world as well, once in a while. But end of the day, it's all very close. So you see how these kind of things are pushing. Let's just take the NFTs. As an example, NFTs, some people look at that as something that's separate from DeFi. Again, I think maybe it's more a technology perspective, but I think it's the same thing. But you see a lot of people coming in with money that comes outside of crypto to buy NFTs because it was cool and hot and people wanted it, right? We had Justin Bieber buying apes and Snoop Dogg and whatever. Steph Curry started a lot of it. So you see people coming in with fiat money, buying assets on chain. And the gateway for that is DeFi. So it's quite connected. There's a good feedback there.
So DeFi is like the base layer, and then you have all these other components.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. It all works together.
I mean, how do we look to the real scale though? Because for me, DeFi, decentralized gambling, the monetization of everything, tokenization of everything, isn't necessarily the next wave of proper adoption. I feel like it's more about the user experience, abstracting a lot of that stuff so that you don't need to worry about, losing it. My dad doesn't want to lose his private keys and lose all his money, So I'm interested in what the panelists think the next phase is and how all these, building blocks join together. Where do we go first for adoption? What moves the needle? What brings these people in? Will gambling on people having a date and breaking up or not bring in 1 billion users?
It's all about accessibility, really, isn't it? Like, it's all about user experience. If it takes me 10 steps to log into a DEX, swap one token from the other, and then I try and explain that to someone I meet on the street, I'm going to lose them after step 2. And they're going to go, okay, this is meant to be accessible. This is meant to be decentralized. Great, it's decentralized, but I can't use it because I'm completely lost after the initial step. So I think it's for retail and for institutions, it's about how do we make the space accessible and improve that user experience.
Yeah, I'll just say, maybe just also mindful of time. And in my mind, the next wave is interoperability, but not interoperability between blockchains, interoperability between the banking infrastructure and blockchains. And we're seeing a lot of projects like Layer 0, XLR, Chainlink, CCIP, many others, connecting not the blockchains only, but moving messages across infrastructures. So a banking player can keep their legacy tech, don't have to go and have some new engineers coming on board, and they could interact with these various blockchains. And that is incredibly powerful from that perspective. The second prediction is around on-chain derivatives. in my mind, on-chain derivatives is the next wave of just crypto or DeFi like activity overall. And if there's any projects that are in the crowd that are keen to have a discussion, we are very open to have these kind of chats, because it's kind of aligns with our vision as a company.
And I'd agree on that. That's the most asked question from institutions is about, that I hear is around derivatives.
Is it? That's interesting.
Great to hear that.
I'm going to take a slightly different view. I think I don't necessarily agree. I can't remember your initial statement, Neil, but I think it was around like Web3 and DeFi not necessarily being the same thing.
Sure. Well, it was also what what ushers in the next wave of adoption, and where does DeFi sit in that stack?
I don't sort of necessarily agree that everything that happens on chain, just because it it involves a token sort of swapping, means that it's DeFi or finance. I do tend to sort of box that stuff off more sort of specifically around actual financial products or the on-chain version of financial products that we know and have great experience of in the TradFi world. So I wouldn't say that sort of everything's DeFi, just because it's a transaction. However, I do think in terms of predictions about what's going to happen next, where we're going. I do think we're seeing now, which is awesome, by the way, the coming of age of DeFi 1.0. Your makers, your compounds, your Aves, Uniswaps even, with these huge treasuries and with these amazing, this amazing sort of ability to ride the wave of these of the bear market and these huge tests that they underwent, these huge,
decentralization,
these huge stress tests that they underwent, and that for any financial product or financial institution is one of the most important sort of elements in their story. Is can they survive these huge stress tests, right? And they did, and they came out the other side. And you've got people like Aave making $70,000 a day in rev. You've got people like Maker making over $200 million a year in the bear market in revenue. That for me is the sort of the prediction, is that DeFi 1.0 is coming of age, and how is that now going to kick on to the next level, or what sort of new wave of financial products are we going to see on chain as a result of that?
Sure. I mean, Maker's a gold standard for me in so many elements of decentralization in the space. Thank you for pointing out that timer that I hadn't noticed. So let's go and just give me Angus, you've given us your prediction. Ran, what's your prediction? What's the next big thing? What's the next leg up?
So I think it's quite hard to predict. There's so many competing narratives, and there's always like the one thing that gives the big push in terms of popular opinion. I do think things are a bit more macro. So there's a lot of teams are working now, building crazy stuff, surviving the bear market exactly, and building very, very interesting things that not a lot of people are using, just because where the macroeconomics are. I do believe that the moment interest rates are going to start going down, you'd see risk assets going up, you would see Bitcoin going up, and then everything comes back into the industry, and then that's when we'll see like what's winning and what's competing. But I am very bullish, and I do believe that the next big wave is going to be on-chain, and we'll just have to kind of sit there, keep building, wait for it, and be there when it happens.
Sure. Michael?
I've already given that
you've
predictability. Yeah, we're talking about the interoperability and on-chain derivatives. That was, I would see as the next leg up for sure.
Okay. Eva?
I would just kind of reiterate some of the other points, move from retail to seeing more institutions, increase liquidity, and DeFi derivatives becoming a...
DeFi derivatives. Thank you. So we could keep going, but we're going to have to stop. Thank you, Michael. Okay, guys, thanks. That was great. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. I'm glad we kind of filled it up again.
Thank you.